Florida just lost a recruit to Miami, and they've only got 2 commitments so far. Is Billy Napier being on the hot seat really making that big a difference for the Gators?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into The Portal. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making The Portal your first listen each and every day. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere else. We're going to be talking about the Gators, who are struggling a little bit on the recruiting trail. It's crazy to think it should be one of the easiest programs in the country to get recruits, but they sit at 2 after losing Jalen Waters. He's now going to be headed to Miami. Looks that way at least. And why? What's going on? We're going to figure that out with our guy, Mr. Brandon Olsen. Brandon, I know you love it when Florida's struggling on the recruiting trail. You just live for that. Are you as surprised as I know Billy's on the hot seat, but I still thought with the way they finished last year, got DJ, he's going to play 2 more seasons. So any recruit they get in the 26 class would play with DJ for at least 1, possibly 2. What am I missing? Why is it this bad? Because it doesn't, like on my timeline on X and Instagram, I don't see as much Florida recruiting news as I thought. What gives?
I just think it's really tough to recruit if you're Florida right now, which is, I mean, we don't have to elaborate on that one. We know where we both land on that. But it's just, like this is a thing I've been saying for a while now. It's really tough to convince kids for the 2026 class, like, oh, commit to Florida and come play with me, if they don't know if you're going to have a job. That's really, and that's, I'm not even doing the whole like, oh, fire Billy thing. Like I'm not even going that route. It's just genuinely, it's really tough to convince a kid, hey, not only am I going to be here for your first year, which is probably going to be a redshirt year for most kids, but I'm going to be here for the years following that. It's just really tough when everybody knows that you just barely made it through 2024. It's really tough to convince people that you're going to be there for even their freshman year and beyond. It's just a hard sell right now.
I get that. But as I've said, there are about 5 to 8 schools that for recruiting, a dead rat could recruit to UF. It's in-state. It's the state university in the Sunshine State, along with Texas, Ohio State, Southern Cal, maybe Georgia. Those might be the best schools to recruit at because they have big bases. Like there's no true great state. U in California, SC is the one private school I put in that. Everybody else, it's just, this is not hard. So LSU, I guess you could throw in there too. But for UF to sit at 2 recruits, and Billy's, from all accounts, Billy Napier is a guy that people enjoy being around. I mean, you've been around him. I've never spoken to anybody who said, man, he's just a jerk. I can't stand that.
I've called for his job and he was like, yeah, man, I get it. It's cool. He's a great guy.
That's wild.
Yeah, no.
I wouldn't like you if I was him.
I don't like me and I'm me. Like, it's not even about being him. It's just, I don't like me. But no, Billy's a great guy. Everybody says it. He is one of the more consistent recruiters on the staff right now. Like people can say anything they want about Will Harris leaving, being like, oh, one of your best recruiters. Billy's the best recruiter that this team has. And there may be negatives and there may be the big knock of he won't be there. But as far as consistently being in touch with these recruits, selling a genuine message, like he can be wrong about things, but everything he's selling kids, he's genuinely believing in. And I do think that matters, right? Like you can be wrong about things, but that doesn't mean you were lying. That just means you were wrong about things. Maybe you misjudged your expectations or whatever that may be. So I think that when it comes to recruiting the right way, I think Billy does a lot of it the right way. But there's just some things where at a certain point that doesn't matter. And I think that's where Florida's at right now, with it just not mattering right now.
Well, it's wild. I just wanted to start with that because, I've been talking to you about this for over a year. It's like they need to figure it out one way or the other. And he's just kind of hovering in no man's land. It's the worst place for a program.
Yep.
But how much negative recruiting do you think Billy is getting from, I don't know, I'll just use 2 or 3 easy. South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida State. We'll just use those 3 because they all recruit North Florida, South Georgia hard. I'm sure you've heard some of that. Is that fairly accurate, indicative of what's going on?
Not so much South Carolina, because I do think that Billy has a great counterpoint to South Carolina. Shane Beamer is the only coach in Billy Napier's tenure that they've played multiple times and Billy's won every time.
That's hilarious.
Billy's 2-0 against Shane Beamer. That's it. Like that's he's lost to Stoops. He lost to everybody else. He lost to Sam Pittman.
That's not good.
He beat Shane Beamer twice. And one of them was a comeback at South Carolina win with Graham Mertz leading the way there. I think that South Carolina, there's really not much they can say about Florida right now that is anything that Billy can't just go, okay, but I beat him twice. And Shane Beamer, was it he broke his foot after Florida beat them the first time? He like kicked the Gatorade container. I think it was broke his foot afterwards. Like that's a rough loss. So I don't think South Carolina has much that they can really say about Billy without him just going, hey, scoreboard. But Georgia absolutely negatively recruiting. I mean, look, because there's people that'll on Twitter go, oh, Florida, if they fire Billy, should go get Kirby. Kirby hates Florida.
He played for Georgia, for the love of God.
He probably doesn't even care about recruiting Georgia at this point. He just cares about keeping from Florida. Every time this transfer portal season, you see, oh, Florida's interested in this quarterback. You know who offered them the next day?
Yeah, that'd be
Georgia. Yeah. Like Kirby cares about playing keep away more than anything else. So I'd imagine the negative recruiting job he's doing is just insane. And Florida State
rivalry.
Yeah, rivalry. But I will say this: if I'm Billy, I do think that you could go, hey, like the only reason Mike has a job is because his buyout's crazy right now. Because 2-10 would have gotten you fired at almost.
That's 100%.
So if I'm Billy, I'm saying, yeah, okay. Like, but just know the guy that's telling you all these negative things about me, the only reason he's allowed to tell you those negative things is because he has a big buyout, but he sucks. And that would be my exact point to him. And I would show them the post-game clip of him throwing a little fit after Florida planted the flag at midfield and Mike Norvell not wanting to shake hands and yelling about it. I would just show that. I'm like, that's who you want to play for? A little crybaby? I'd say a way worse word that I can't say on the air, but that would be my, like, so as far as I'm concerned from those 3, it would mostly be Georgia, and Florida State is willing to spend more money than Florida usually. So there's that at least, which NIL has always been a thing that's held Florida back through the NIL era.
Yeah. When they want to spend it, they do. When they don't, they don't. Florida's weird.
Yeah.
Their NIL is better than Florida State's overall when they really want it to be. But the way they go about it, the coach doesn't have the same control. I'll leave it at that. And I know you've explained to me what that is off the air. But anyway, it's also one of the reasons they finished good last year because they decided to spend. It's just so bizarre.
Crazy how that happens. Who would have
I wonder why they had that extra money. Why? Oh, yeah, that's right.
No clue how that happened. They just found it.
When we come back, let's talk a little bit about a few of the kids for the Gators that you think can make an impact probably in spring and then definitely in the fall. That is next here on The Portal. This message is from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes are dealing with piles of paperwork and frustrating forms, and then waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. Now taxes are easily uploaded for your forms to a TurboTax expert who's matched to your unique tax situation. An expert who's backed by the latest technology, which cross-checks millions of data points for 100% accuracy. While they work on your taxes, you get real-time updates on their progress, and you get the most money back guaranteed. While you go about your day, no stressing, no worrying, no waiting. Now that is how you get taxes done. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com. TurboTax.com/guarantees. I like Vernell Brown and Dallas Wilson to play at some point this next season. Let's just get those out there now. Elite wide receiver recruits, and it's a little easier receiver to play. However, you and I discussing this off air, we agreed that it's not like Florida sucks at wide receiver. They got some pretty good players, but how do they adjust? You want to add on to why I think that? And I'm sure you've got more info than I do on Vernell, Dallas, and if anybody else that you think makes an impact out of the recruiting class for the Gators.
Yeah, I think Dallas for me is probably the top guy that I think of, even over Vernell. I mean, Vernell will probably play special teams more and get playing time in the slot. Interested to see how that rotation works out with Trey Wilson and Vernell Brown third.
Absolutely.
But Dallas, I think, can play right away. I don't think he'll be starting. I think that'll be J. Michael Sturdivant at the UCLA transfer. But I think Dallas will be that number 2 receiver at the X spot. I think he's just tremendous football player. Incredible to me that he went from a 5-star to a 4-star when there were no games being played. And the only thing that happened was that he didn't go to the little camps that they were having, the Under Armour All-American game and all that. And crazy how his rating dropped for not playing football. Very interesting. But I think that he'll be able to come in and play right away. I don't think anybody doubts that. He's got that college-ready skill set from day one. Jaden Woods is another guy that I think
that's right.
Playing time will be available early on the edge just because they're replacing so many snaps. You have TJ Searcy had your 5th most snaps at the edge spot. Jack Pyburn was a starter, and you had Justice Boone as well leave, who Justice Boone didn't play a ton, but on average played about 11 snaps per game. And so that adds up. You know, when you only get, we'll say, depending on who you're playing, 80 snaps in a game, and you had someone on there for 11, those are significant snaps at that point. So you got a lot of snaps that are just available in the edge room, and I don't know how many of those can be taken up by George Gums and LJ McCray, because even if they double their snap count, you're still looking for another few hundred snaps to be covered for. And I think Jaden Woods can be a guy that takes that over. And Billy Napier seems like he's very high on Jaden Woods.
Yeah, that's a kid out of Kansas that got kind of overlooked in the recruiting rankings early because he's from Kansas. If he played in Fort Lauderdale or Dallas or played in Cleveland or something, everybody would have been recruiting him earlier. He can really rush the passer. Committed to Penn State at one point. If there's one thing Penn State understands, it's how to develop a pass rusher. They have definitely figured that out. Abdul Carter, come on down. But he'll be a top 4 or 5 pick, I'd imagine.
Hopefully he's number 3. Just want to throw that one out there.
Oh, let me guess. The Giants have the 3rd pick in the draft. Is that
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Okay. Well, the Giants need about the first 12 picks the way they played this year, but that's another story.
A lot more than 12. A lot more than 12.
They are horrible. Watching Giants football makes my eyes hurt. Which recruits from the 26 class right now, again, they've got 2 kids committed, are your quote-unquote must-gets, or at least you would think they are, for the Gators? Because they need something to jumpstart them. So I'm looking at this from a perspective, okay, you obviously want great recruits, but who's going to draw eyeballs? Oh, this kid committed, to kind of help the Gators maybe get over the problem with having Billy on the hot seat. I mean, I don't know if you can do that completely, but it would at least bolster their chances to get other guys. Who can be the Pied Piper?
I think one name that could really help Florida. I'm not saying that I think Florida is going to land him, but I do think that one name that could really help kind of jumpstart things would be someone that we spoke about last week or so, whenever we last spoke with Bear McWhorter. I think that he's someone that, of course, has his dad played with Billy at Furman, and so that's easy recruiting pitch. And I also feel like for Billy, you can kind of tell his dad, like, hey, like we're going to be here. Like, the job stability thing is not it's being overplayed right now. And you've got a better chance of them actually believing you because they've known you for a few decades. And so it's not going to be as skeptical there. I look at Cannon Pickett as another player, offensive lineman as well, which is an area that Florida has specifically really struggled with recruiting. But they seem to be taking a different approach to it this time around, with Jonathan DeCoster being the primary recruiter on the O-line. And he joined during the summer last year because Darnell Stapleton, the other offensive line coach, got hired by the Commanders, and that was a late hire. So maybe that's why they didn't have Jonathan DeCoster do that from day one. But now that he's the leading guy, Johnny Jones is another one, the offensive tackle there. That I think offensive line is specifically a position that they need to hammer home and try to just get some kind of traction with. Because right now, you had no traction there for years, and you've got no legitimate traction that we're thinking, oh, yeah, any day now this kid could pop for Florida.
It's amazing that Florida would struggle at any position for more than one cycle. I mean, it can happen in a year, but when was the last time you said, man, Florida's O-line class is top 10 nationally? I don't know if I can say that since Urban.
I don't know if I was even in high school last time you could have said that. So,
yeah, it's just nuts. It's just nuts because they should get at least 2 top linemen out of in-state every year, you would think, but they do not. What about the situation going into spring? They've got any big junior days or anything they have coming up? I'm sure March has got to have a date. Is there anything you know about that?
Yeah, they've got a few kids. They've been setting up some official visits. They actually set up an official visit apparently, or they're setting up an official visit with Jalen Waters again. So
are you serious?
So they're allegedly setting that up. We'll see how that really plays out. But yeah, I think right now they're just trying to hammer home getting some of the guys that they think they have legit shots with. Like a Braylon Womack is one that we spoke about that.
Yeah.
He's reportedly got a fantastic relationship with new safeties coach, Vinny Sinceri. I don't know where the relationship comes from, but they've apparently got a fantastic relationship there. A guy like Caden Hall, also in the secondary. We spoke about He's Kent last week a little bit. He's someone that we can like Caden Prothrow. Like it's weird because it feels like the positions that they're hammering or not hammering, but where they have legit traction are like tight end, safety, and offensive line, specifically on the interior. It's not the premium positions that we usually talk about of like QB receiver, tackle, edge. Yeah. It's not that right now. It seems like they're getting the most traction at the non-premium positions, which we'll see how things work out. I have a theory that I'm working on that is they're going to spend all their money at the premium positions. And so maybe that's just a thing where we're going to have to wait until later in the cycle, especially if Billy does kind of solidify job security, that maybe we'll have to wait to see that movement later in the cycle, but seems like a weird spot for where they're getting their traction right now.
It is Florida football. There's nothing normal about it right now, as I'm sure Mr. Brandon Olsen, who runs Locked On Gators, can certify. When we come back, I want to talk about the base of the program, the roster, which spots, if they missed again in the 26 class, we've talked about some of the kids he's got to give it. Let's finish off with the kids that, from a positional standpoint, that he better get or it's not going to go so well for Florida in the future. O-line is definitely a spot. We've already addressed it. We get the elephant out of the room on that one. Not that any Florida fan wouldn't already know it, but UF stinks at recruiting O-line for 5 years in a very comfortably conservative answer. They're probably more like 12, but they've been too inconsistent. They get a great player, then the kid next to him, somebody that has no business at UF. What other spots do they have to hit in this class?
I think that we have to look at, I think for 2026, you have to land some linebackers just because by the time those guys are in their freshman year, you'll be getting ready to say bye to Miles Graham and Aaron Childs and all them. So they'll be gone by that point. And which is just, it's insane when you talk about the roster building process of college football, where it's like, yeah, these guys that just finished their freshman year, we're already recruiting their replacements for when they're leaving us. So I think that linebackers one. I think corner's another one where you just – I don't think they have the quantity at corner. I just don't think that they have the
So depth
bodies
is a
in the room right
concern.
now. Yeah, depth is a concern right now. They have a lot of young guys right now, but that's also a thing where we're in the modern era of college football. We can be honest about things. Depth doesn't stick around. Like these
No.
kids, especially when you get multiple blue chip players at one position, if they don't get playing time by the end of year 2, they're almost definitely gone nowadays. So I do think that you need to add some corners because I would expect some attrition within the next year. We'll say, portal opens at the end of the season, you're going to lose some corners. So I think you need to be already backfilling that. And I think those are the two main spots that you can look at. Defensive tackle is another one, but they've done a decent job getting guys that come in. Like DeAndre Robinson is not someone that I expected to play from day one. Neither was Mekhi Boyro. And they both played pretty well from day one. And that's a testament to Gerald Chapman, I guess, with the defensive line there.
We did a good job last year with that. They improved quite a bit as the season went on. And freshman D tackles, that's always iffy.
Yeah, they did a good job there. The edge room, we spoke about it. There's 800 snaps opening up, and Georgia Gums is going to be gone after this year. Then if LJ McCray develops at the rate that people anticipated him to develop, he'll be gone after 2026. And so I think the edge room is another one that just needs some kind of juice to it. I'm begging them to please go for a more, we'll say bendy, twitchy edge rusher. I feel like they've gone for the taller, powerful, rigid guys. And I want a Dante Fowler. I want a Dante Fowler type of guy. Obviously, I know he was a fantastic recruit, fantastic player, so you're not going to find that whenever. But I'm looking for a player like that. I don't think they've gone that skill set wise, and more legit outside receivers need to be hammered. Got a ton of slot guys, need to get more outside.
Well, they like everybody else are always looking for the Dallas Wilson kid, the kid that's 6'1.5", 6'2" minimum, weighs 200 pounds and can run. Well, so's Georgia, so's Texas, so's Oklahoma. Everybody wants that kid. So I get the receiver thing. Where I'm curious about for them, can they get safeties like they've been doing and figure out how to, because Florida's back end, for the love of mankind, can we just get the understanding of cover 2 and cover 3 and work from there? Because like they always have a bust at every game that is just absolutely ridiculous. It's not a physical skill thing. Can they recruit kids that understand the scheme and work together?
Well, hey, now they have 2 new coaches in the secondary.
That's true. Why don't you kind of give us a background of them while we're doing it?
You had Will Harris left for Miami, of course, which was
correct.
A layered decision, I'll say. I will also say this for any Florida fan saying, but the PFF grades dropped. And for anybody trying to downplay Will Harris being a good coach, he's a good coach, right? Like we could admit that because just a week ago, everybody was talking about how Billy Napier can't let Will Harris leave, can't let him go to Texas or the NFL, do whatever you can to keep him. And instead he went to Miami. So he's not any worse of a coach just because he went to Miami. He's still a good coach. As much as I hate that he now went there, he's there. And then you hired Vinny Cincinnati, who was already there as a safeties coach and co-defensive coordinator. Can't tell you a damn thing about him. They hired a guy to be their secondary or to be their safeties coach with 1 year of safety coach experience, 3 years of running backs coach experience, and 1 year of being a defensive coaching assistant. And that's it. And then, of course, they hired earlier this week, they hired Darren Wilson, the Georgia State defensive coordinator, who was there for a month. So we never actually saw him be a DC. Vinny Cincinnati was the Jacksonville State DC for about 3 weeks. And so Billy's just going in and picking off the small school DCs, I guess, and hiring them. Very interested to see what happens. Darren Wilson is someone that I've spoken to quite a few people, and they love him. But I think for me, the biggest question mark right now is just, I don't have many question marks about his coaching ability. Recruiting, going to be where I have to kind of just I need to see it. Anything he did at Arkansas doesn't matter. Arkansas has not been great with football recruiting. They've got the same, is Sam Pittman going to be fired every year conversation for 4 years straight now. Like, it's just been happening consistently. And NIL, they're known for being one of the more conservative schools. They've lost so many players. So Can I fault him for anything that happened recruiting wise? I can't personally. I know other people can, but I can't fault him for anything recruiting wise. So it's just, there's a lot of question marks, and that's the Billy Napier, like that's his specialty, is just hiring a guy where the fan base is going to go, who the hell is that? And then we try to figure it out and we see what happens. But that's how it's looking.
Well, he's going to have an interesting time moving into the state of Florida, where recruiting is so volatile every year. The out-of-state programs like Georgia and Tennessee and everybody come down, try to get kids, and Ohio State, Texas, all that. And then on top of it, you're battling Miami and Florida State too. So state supremacy has different meanings, and it's a whole other ball of wax at UF than it is at Arkansas. Thank you once again, Brandon, for coming on the show. How can everybody find your work?
Find me every day with Locked On Gators, and find my written work if you like miserable football coverage with New York Giants on SI.
I'm not going to comment on that last part. You poor soul.
I love doing it, but damn, they suck.
They're terrible. You can find the portal wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, and if you want to get it, for at least for now, on YouTube, just go to YouTube and then type in LO the portal, LO the portal. Like, subscribe, and share this pod. We will see you again soon.